My son slid the folder across the kitchen table without looking at me. "Mom, just sign it," he said. "It's the simplest thing in the world." The folder sat between us like something dead. I looked at it. I looked at him, at the tailored jacket he was wearing on a Tuesday afternoon, at the watch on his wrist that cost more than I spent on groceries in 2 years. Then I looked back at the folder. I didn't touch it. Margaret. His voice had that particular edge I'd been hearing for the past 3 years. The one that said, "You are old, you are slow, and you are making this harder than it needs to be. It's just a formality. We've talked about this. We had talked about it." That was true. But talking about something and signing something are two very different things, and at 68 years old, I had finally learned the difference. I folded my hands in my lap and said, "Let me read it first." He exhaled, not a sigh more, like a controlled release of pressure, the kind a man does when he's decided the person across from him is the problem. My son, David, had been doing that exhale for 3 years, ever since his father passed. Ever since the house and the accounts and the investment portfolio suddenly had only one name attached to them, mine. "There's nothing complicated in there," he said. "It just transfers the property into a family trust, for tax purposes, to protect you." He said the last 2 words like a gift. To protect you. As though I were a lamp that needed to be moved away from the edge of a shelf. I was not a lamp. But I didn't say that. I just smiled at him the way I'd been smiling at difficult things my whole life, gently, without giving anything away, and I said, "I'll have my attorney look it over." The word attorney changed something in his face. Just for a second, a flicker, like a light bulb about to go out. Then he smoothed it over and said, "You don't need an attorney for something this routine, Mom. You'd just be throwing money away. Then it won't take her long to read it," I said. He left 20 minutes later, with the folder still unsigned. I want to tell you something about the house first, because the house is where everything starts. My husband, Robert, and I bought it in 1987. We were young and broke, and so in love that being broke didn't feel like a problem. It felt like an adventure we were having together. The house was small. The yard was overgrown. The previous owners had painted the kitchen a color that I can only describe as the inside of a pumpkin. We thought it was perfect. We spent 36 years in that house. We raised 2 children there, David and his younger sister, Carol. We buried a dog in the backyard, under the oak tree. Robert built a workbench in the garage that was slightly crooked, and every time I told him so, he said it had character. I still have that workbench. I still think it has character. When Robert died 3 years ago, I became the kind of widow that people are careful around. My friends called more. My neighbors left food on the porch. My children came home for the funeral, and they were kind to me, and I was grateful. And then, slowly, over the months that followed, David started talking about the future. It was always framed as concern. "Mom, you're in that big house alone. Mom, have you thought about what happens if you need more care someday? Mom, it makes sense to plan ahead, and I understood the concern. I did. Losing a parent makes you face things you'd rather not face. I knew that. I gave him room for it. But there's a difference between concern and control. And it took me longer than it should have to see which one I was actually dealing with. The first time he suggested putting the house in a trust, I thought it was a reasonable idea, poorly timed. I told him I needed a few months before making any decisions. He agreed. He was patient, I'll give him that. He was very, very patient. The second time, he brought spreadsheets. He had numbers and projections and a folder full of documents from a financial planner I'd never met. He talked for 45 minutes. I sat across from him at this same kitchen table and nodded in the right places and thought, something is wrong here, but I cannot yet name what it is. The third time, he brought his wife. My daughter-in-law, Sandra, has always been polished. She speaks in a warm voice and uses the word absolutely the way other people use punctuation. She sat down across from me, and she took my hands, and she said, "Margaret, we just love you so much, and we want to make sure you're protected." The folder was thicker this time. I still didn't sign it. After they left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. The oak tree in the backyard was losing its leaves. I watched them come down one by one in the October wind, and I thought about Robert, about how he used to say that the most important thing a person could do was pay attention. "Don't let the noise drown out what you already know," he told me once. You always know more than you think you do. I went to my bedroom and I opened the drawer in my nightstand, and I took out the business card my neighbor Patricia had given me 6 months earlier. She'd pressed it into my hand after a neighborhood association meeting and said, very quietly, "If you ever need someone to look at your documents, call her. She's good. She's very good." The card said, Ellen Marsh, Estate and Elder Law. I called the next morning. Ellen was not what I expected. She was younger than me, mid-40s. Maybe with reading glasses she kept taking on and off, and a directness that I found immediately refreshing. In our first meeting, she let me talk for 40 minutes without interrupting. When I was finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I see the documents?" I'd brought copies of everything David had shown me. She read through them slowly. I watched her face while she read the small frown that came and went, the moment when she turned back 2 pages and read something again. When she looked up, she said, "Margaret, do you understand that if you signed this, you would have surrendered control of your primary residence and your investment accounts to a trust in which your son is the sole trustee?" I said, "I suspected something like that." She set the papers down. "You would have had no unilateral authority over your own assets. You could have been removed from the house with a 2/3 vote of the trustees, and the only other trustee listed here is his wife." The kitchen-colored pumpkin walls of the house I'd bought when I was young and broke suddenly felt very far away. "What do I do?" I asked. Ellen took her glasses off. "You let me help you do it right," she said. Over the next 4 months, we did it right. First, Ellen drafted a revocable living trust in my name, one where I was not just a beneficiary but the sole trustee. The house, the investment accounts, the smaller savings account Robert and I had kept for emergencies since 1994, all of it went into the trust properly, legally, in a way that protected me completely. My wishes were documented. My directives were clear. Ellen walked me through every page and explained every word. And then she had me explain it back to her, because she said she wanted to be sure I understood it, not just that I'd read it. Then we addressed power of attorney. I gave it to Carol. Carol is different from her brother. She's quieter, less polished, more interested in her garden than in financial projections. She lives about 40 minutes away and calls me every Sunday morning without fail. When I called her and explained what was happening, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Mom, how long has this been going on?" I told her. Another silence. And then, in a voice that sounded remarkably like her father's, "Okay, what do you need me to do?" I told her that, too. By the time February came, everything was in order. The trust was established, the accounts were secured, the power of attorney was filed. Ellen had also written a letter, calm, professional, with citations that outlined what the documents David had been presenting to me would have legally accomplished, for the record. I felt, for the first time in 3 years, like myself again. David called the first week of February wanting to schedule another meeting. He was very pleasant about it. He said he had some updated documents simplified this time, he said. Much easier to understand, and he'd love to stop by on Saturday. I said Saturday was fine. Carol came over Friday evening. She sat with me at the kitchen table, and we had tea, and she went through everything one more time with me, even though I already knew it cold. She held my hand at one point and didn't say anything. She just held it. I thought about how Robert used to say that Carol got all his best qualities, and David got all his worst ones, and he said it like a joke, but I was never completely sure he was joking. Saturday morning, I made coffee. I straightened the kitchen. I put nothing on the table, no papers, no folders, nothing, just 2 coffee cups. David arrived at 10. Sandra was with him. They came in the way they always came, in comfortable, proprietary, like people who had already decided how things were going to go. David set his briefcase on the table and said, "Morning, Mom. You look good." Sandra said, "Absolutely," which meant hello. They sat down. David opened the briefcase. He pulled out a new folder thinner than before, just as he'd promised, and he slid it across the table toward me. "Much simpler," he said. "Ellen revised everything." "Which Ellen?" I asked. He paused. "The financial planner's colleague. She cleaned it up." "I see," I said. I didn't touch the folder. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, and I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I tried to find in his face The boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard, who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides, who cried at his father's funeral, in a way that broke my heart wide open. He was in there somewhere. I chose to believe that, but I also chose to protect myself. David, I said, I have some papers too. I got up from the table, and I went to the hall closet, and I took down the manila envelope Ellen had given me. I came back, and I set it in front of him. He looked at it. He looked at me. Sandra had gone very still. What is this? He said. It's the trust, I said. My trust. Established 6 weeks ago. I sat back down. The house is in it, the investment accounts, the savings. Everything your father and I built is protected by me, for me. With Carol as my power of attorney, I paused. You should have Ellen, your Ellen, take a look, so she can explain it to you. David opened the envelope slowly. He pulled out the documents. He read the first page, and then he turned to the second, and then he put it down. Mom, I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it. I'm really not. But I am done signing things I haven't read, and I am done pretending I don't understand things that I understand perfectly. We were trying to help you, Sandra said. Her voice was still warm, but the absolutely was gone. I know that's what you were telling yourselves, I said. David looked up from the documents. Something was moving across his face. Not quite shame, not quite anger. Something in between that didn't have a clean name, he said. The house should have been in a trust years ago. I was just trying to— It is in a trust, I said. My trust. That's what I just told you. The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the oak tree in the backyard moving in the winter wind. I thought about Robert. I thought about 1987 and the pumpkin-colored walls and the slightly crooked workbench in the garage. I thought about every mortgage payment and every tax bill and every decision we'd ever made together about this house and this life. I'm not cutting you out, I said. That has never been what this was about. When I'm gone, what I leave will be divided fairly, and Carol will see to it that it is. But while I am alive and in this house, I am the one who decides what happens to it. I picked up my coffee cup. That's all. That's the whole thing. David didn't say anything for a while. Then he picked up his folder, the new, simplified one, and he put it back in his briefcase. Okay, he said, not graciously, but he said it. Sandra said nothing. She looked at her hands. We finished our coffee. It was not comfortable, but it was honest. And I had learned a long time ago that comfortable and honest are not always the same thing, and that when you have to choose, you choose honest. They left around 11:30. I stood at the kitchen window and watched their car back out of the driveway. Then I called Carol. How did it go? She asked. Fine, I said. It went fine. Did he? He put the folder away, I said. She laughed a short, relieved sound. Good, she said. Good, Mom. After we hung up, I put on my coat and I went out to the backyard. The ground was cold and the oak tree was bare, just its skeleton against the February sky, and underneath it was the small stone marker we'd put there years ago when we buried our old dog, Biscuit. I stood there for a while. I thought about Robert, and I thought about how much he would have had to say about all of this, and how I would have listened, and how, in the end, I probably would have done exactly what I did anyway, and how he would have known that from the beginning and loved me for it. I was 68 years old. I had built a life in this house with my own hands and my husband's hands, and 36 years of ordinary days that added up to something I wasn't willing to hand over because someone had put it in a folder and called it simple. The oak tree had no leaves, but it wasn't gone. It was just waiting for spring. So was I. If this story meant something to you, if you've been through something like this, or you're watching someone you love go through it right now, I hope you know that it is never too late to ask questions. It is never too late to make a phone call. It is never too late to say, wait, let me read that first. You are not too old to protect yourself. You are not too old to understand what's in front of you. You might be exactly old enough. Thank you for being here with me today. If this reached you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And take care of yourself. Really take care. I'll see you in the next one.